I'm on my parent. Okay, there we go. Awesome. Also, happy May 4th to all who celebrate. I grew up in a house with 3 brothers, so we celebrate intensely and we watch Star Wars all day. So hopefully you did too, and if not, that's okay. But today we had a little bit of a pivot. Originally, we were going to have Heddas on the call, but they ended up having to reschedule, which I think worked out really well. Because this week we are going to be talking about takeaways, mainly from our 2 team races that we've had so far, being Texas 70.3 and then Ironman Texas. And as the early season kicks off, there's a lot of things that are kind of a refresher that either we forget about throughout the off season, or it's just kind of like busting the rust off as we dive back into the season. And so that is what we wanted to cover today. We have a few points from each of the races, but I would say if you have something personally that you took away from whether it be this race or another race that you've done that you feel would be valuable to share with everyone as they can take that into the remainder of this year, drop it in the chat, raise your hand, whatever. We'd love to hear from you. We want this to be interactive. So we have a few bullet points, but ultimately we want this to just be pretty conversational. But we'll cover Texas 70.3 since that one was the first thing that happened. And those of you that don't know, Texas 70.3 ended up being a little bit of a crazy day. The swim was canceled. The weather was insane. It was downpouring that morning. I have never seen a race situation where it was like a mass exodus of people on race morning. They were just grabbing their stuff and they were like, not today. And I think that's okay. Like, there's always other races, which is something we'll cover here in a little bit. But it was a crazy day, all that to say. So the first takeaway that I had in talking with athletes and stuff, and I think it's the first thing that really comes up as the season starts and you do your first race, and that is just trusting your training. You know, we train so much during off season. Sometimes off season, especially if you're doing an early season race and maybe you had a late season race, off season can feel so long and it can just feel like you're just training. And then, oh my gosh, here comes the race. And I think it's easy for us to be thinking about the race so much because again, you're training so long for it. And the more we think about something, the more, at least for me, the nerves, the pressure, everything just kind of starts to build. But one thing that I have really seen with athletes in their success with early season race is just lean into the confidence that your training has given you. So one thing that Natasha, she said during our pre-race call was, you have earned the right to enjoy the day. And that's ultimately what your race day is. It is your opportunity to enjoy all of the work that you have done and you have put in your race build, in your off season. And the race is ultimately then just a celebration of that. And that applies whether you are going out to win or you are going out to just have, you know, a day of completion, whatever that looks like for you. Just lean into that confidence. And this applies, I think, really well also if maybe you have a fall race, maybe you're not racing this spring. And so then you're going to go into, you know, you're now training, maybe doing a little bit of a base, then you're going to go into maybe some specific work, and then you'll go into your race build and it feels far away. But whenever that day comes, trust in your training and believe that all the work that you have done is going to show up. And again, it's just a celebration of your preparation for that day. Coaches, anything that you want to add on to that before we move on, or are we good? Awesome. Alice gave me a thumbs up. Megan gave me a thumbs up. We're moving on. Okay. The second thing, and this was the biggest thing with Texas 70.3, is just being ready to pivot. Being ready to adjust your strategy, whether it be race morning or even if it's mid-race, if things kind of start going mayhem. One thing that I really love that we do in our pre-race questionnaire, which hopefully all of y'all do those, side plug, is we ask, what are your process goals? So yes, it's really great to have goals of like, I want to swim this time. I want to, bike this fast. Like those are really great things to have. But if we break down the race as a process and overall, what do we want the process of the race to look like? If bike pace is off, if swim pace is off, I'm just going to call out Ironman Texas. I know a lot of people had maybe a easy to then like on the fly, just kind of adjusting as you go and being ready to pivot. But being flexibility can still lead to a successful outcome. So even if things in the moment aren't going the way that you plan, having that flexibility mindset of, okay, maybe this isn't the most ideal situation, but in my process goals, what can I still do to make this successful? A lot of process goals usually relate to mindset. I'm going to stay positive throughout this. I'm going to stay on top of fueling. That's a huge thing in terms of a process goal. So having those process goals can still help you, have those successful outcomes, even if you're having to adjust your strategy. And then one thing that we don't talk about a lot as it relates to weather in our race build is just kind of visualize different race day scenarios. So if it's raining, kind of mentally prepare yourself. I know I'm the most guilty of this. I'm looking at like the 30-day ahead forecast for a race. Obviously, it's going to change in 30 days, but like I'm that person where I'm like, okay, 30 days from now, it's going to be raining. Oh my gosh. And it's probably actually not going to be raining. But being able to just kind of work through those scenarios, you can adapt with composure. You can be ready when race day comes. And as they come, it's not like a detriment. You can just kind of roll with the punches. And again, still have a successful day. And then the last thing, which this kind of ties everything together, is just your mindset is everything. There is nothing that can spiral your race more than a negative mindset. I'm sure we all have been there in a race setting where that negative thought is just like growing and growing and growing and growing. And it's really easy to just allow that voice to reverberate louder and louder and louder. But if you can stay positive and you can remind yourself of the wins that you've had along the way, and also the wins that you've had within the day, even if they're not ideal, you can still be proud of the work that you're doing in the race. And that's why I love this sport so much, because candidly, I don't think there's any sport that teaches you more about yourself, where it's such a long event and you have to continuously be pulling on those positives. You have to continuously keep your mind focused, and there's no better way to just get comfy with what's going on in your mind whenever you can't have music, you can't have your cell phone out there. It's just you and your thoughts, and being able to direct those thoughts and just stay in that positive mindset. So as it relates to Texas 70.3, I could yap on this forever, but as it relates to Texas 70.3, those are some of my takeaways. Coaches, athletes that raced, I know I have a couple of my athletes that were at the race too, Texas 70.3. I don't know if y'all have anything that you want to add. I love what Rob said. Always bring extra things. That's perfect. And that's one thing that we're going to touch on for Ironman Texas takeaways, is just think about the logistics of race day and being prepared. Freezing at a race in July is definitely not something that you would think about, but it does happen depending on where you're racing. But anything else that anybody would want to add as it relates to Texas 70.3 or another 70.3 that you've done so far this year? No, I covered it all. Dang, I am amazing. Okay, we're going to pivot to Ironman Texas. And we have a couple coaches that actually were there live, raced it. We got to cheer their names. So we're going to hear from them. Megan, I'm going to give it over to you first. If you, yes, want to unmute.
Sure. So I would say The biggest thing with Ironman Texas was, for a lot of people, it wasn't wetsuit legal, so you had to pivot to a swim skin. So swimming in a swim skin is obviously drastically different than a wetsuit. So you have to, you have to change your mindset. I know that I had an athlete doing it, and she at first wasn't comfortable. She was at the team dinner and she said, if it's non-wetsuit legal, I'm comfortable swimming in my swim skin, but I'm also nervous doing it. Will I be okay? So it was one of those conversations where you had to reassure them, like, you're going to be fine. Like, you've practiced in both, no big deal. But I think like the whole takeaway with Ironman Texas this year, and yes, it's always warm or hot in Texas, but I think it was actually a bit warmer than what it normally was. So for me on the day, it was really just don't quit. Like, no matter where you were at, like, don't quit. We've all worked really hard through the winter for this. And so when I was out on the bike course, kind of going back to what you were talking about, Ashton, I had to adjust because I actually needed an extra bottle than I thought. So I ended up grabbing from the aid stations and getting more fluid in that way that I needed. And I had already gone through all my nutrition, and I still had, I don't know, maybe like 5-ish miles left. But it really did. It became a day of just kind of adjusting here and there. How are you going to stay cool, basically? And so my biggest thing was never quit. And when I found out I was 5 minutes down from the first place female in my age group, I thought, okay, well, I've made it this far and I'm at mile 10. I'm like, I'm going to finish this thing. And so, I don't know. I just think no matter what the conditions are and no matter how hard you've trained, I think you still have to get to that finish line no matter what it brings you. You can't control the weather. You can only control like what you're doing within yourself. So I think that it's really important to remember that on race day. It can be really hard, but you're out there with other teammates, you're maybe out there with some friends. And so I think it's a little bit more motivating as well, knowing that others are out there and just reminding yourself that you're going through the same conditions as everybody else.
Absolutely. Totally agree. I can't tell you how many times I obviously am just an age grouper, but I've retired on the bike course where you're just like, I don't want to do this again. I'm never doing one of these races again. But it is like the feeling of getting across the finish line, especially whenever you've had a day like that. I feel like sometimes it's that much more rewarding because you're like, okay, I did this. And one thing I always tell my athletes, and I know a couple other coaches tell their athletes too, is you always have that strength with you. You always have that like grit that you got through it. And I tell everyone, like, yeah, I've done Ironmans, because you always have that with you, and it's something to be proud of. So I love that, Coach Megan. Alice, I'm going to hand it over to you. She had some really great takeaways from Ironman Texas, and such a badass day for her. If no one's ever seen Alice race, she's one of my most favorite people to watch race. So anyways, that was just a little plug for you, Alice, but take it away.
Thanks. I feel like some of this is going to be a little repetitive to what Ashton said for 70.3 Texas, but a race is a race. And so I wrote down a few things, so I'm just going to go over them anyway. The first one, and Megan kind of touched on this too, and it's obvious, but I think we don't nail it down enough, is that dialing in your nutrition, particularly in an Ironman, is just as important as like dialing in your swim, bike, run. I always say you can be like the fittest person on the course, but if you mess up your nutrition, your day's ruined. So smart to get that done and like practice. And then for race day, I have my athletes literally write down on a piece of paper the amount of fluid they're taking in, the amount of carbs they're taking in, how many per hour, and the amount of sodium they're taking in, and then how they're going to get it, and to the detail of like, I'm going to take in 4 bottles. I know that I can fit this amount on my bike. I'm going to have to stop at special needs. Like, you need to have that all written out so that going into the race, you're not like, oh my gosh, I can only fit X amount of ounces on my bike. Like, how am I going to take in all this liquid nutrition I've been training with, because you can't fit that amount of liquid on your bike, etc. And then like know how many gels. And like for me personally, I had written out like, I'm going to start taking gels at 30 minutes. I'm going to take 1 gel an hour. I'm going to plan on this amount of gels. So like I wish I had my piece of paper to show you guys because it was nuts, but I knew like exactly where I was going to take it. I knew what aid stations I was going to stop at. So just having that detail down. My next one, Ashton talked about, but just learn to be flexible. Things happen in the race and it's never perfect. So just adapting quickly and staying calm. Like no one's ever had a race where every single thing went the way you expected it to. So just easier said than done, but just like little things, just stay calm, problem solve. You got it. And then the next one, I think Jules did a really, really good post on Instagram about this actually right before Texas, but it really like hit home for me and I kind of used it in my mentality throughout the race, but just the like importance of remaining present when you're racing. You put so much work into that moment. It's hard to kind of like, I don't know, think ahead or think back to what you could have done differently, but you're in that moment only at that moment. So like, don't wish it away in a sense. And yeah, just, I think it's so important to think about not like what you would have done differently, maybe in the swim when you're on the bike, or think about like the run that's to come. Just like be the best athlete you can be like in that second, because you're never going to get that second back. And then an extension of that is that goals are really good. They're really motivating, but don't let your fear of not accomplishing that goal ruin your race. So if you're like, man, I really wanted a sub 1 hour swim and you heard you came out at 1:02, like don't have that ruin you. It's such a long day. Or like you start the run and you're not feeling fantastic and you had the idea of like, I don't know, people love time goals. I hate time goals. My athletes know I hate time goals. But people love the idea of like, oh, I wanted a sub 10 and you know you're not going to get it. Who cares? Like finish strong. Like that is such a arbitrary, stupid thing, a time goal. Like finish with a race that you're proud of. Yes, or a sub 3 marathon, Parker. I'm still going for that myself, but not important. And then the last one doesn't have to do with the race, but it has to do with doing well in the race, is don't leave your pre-race logistics to the last minute. So like if you plan on swimming before the race, find out if there's a pool or if Ironman's hosting an like a open water swim. Like that I made this mistake a few times. You'd get to the race venue and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to do a bike. And then you realize you're in like a busy area and you don't know where you're supposed to bike. And it's so stressful in the moment because you're somewhere new, you just traveled, you have a stressful race coming up. So just like having all those almost like silly logistics out of the way is so key. So like similar to writing out your nutrition, like write out, you know, I'm supposed to do a practice bike. I'm going to find this Strava route, know all that stuff before you even show up so that you can stay even steady and not let stress, because stress is stress. Your body doesn't know the difference between training stress, like maybe it knows lack of sleep, but like life stress, all that. So you want to keep even keel as you can going into a race and just have a good mindset. And then the last one we've all said is just the importance of positivity. I think I yelled positivity to Mike a few times on the run, not because I was feeling it, because I was like trying to force it into my brain. So a smile goes a long way too. Like you might not want to smile, but if you smile, you like instantly start to feel better. It sounds so sappy, but it's true. And sometimes it's like impossible, but if you can force it, it can help. So anyway, a lot of stuff, but racing's fun, so you might as well enjoy it. That's why we all do it.
Yeah, that's so good. One trick that I would do when I was racing is I would just start cheering on the people around me.
Yeah.
Because that is such a huge way where it's like, obviously you're happy for them. Like you can fake it a little bit, but then it really does like rejuvenate you. And you're like, okay, I can do this.
And sometimes they're in a bad place. And if you cheer for them, you see them brighten up. And then you're like, oh, wow, I made someone else's day better. So it sounds bad, but in a weird way, like it then helps you. Like you're helping them, but it helps you. So totally.
Yes. Yeah. It was funny. I was seeing one of my athletes that was running at Ironman Texas, and he was like, I just met this guy and we're going to do it together. And I'm like, that's a lifelong friendship in the making right there. Like, I love that. Yeah, Tim, I love that. Embraces. Like Alice had made a comment in her email where it was like, yes, it's hard, but that's also the rewarding part about racing. And I think sometimes like we love a story, like you love going back and telling a story about, oh, it was so hot, or, oh, it was raining, or, oh, whatever it was. And so it's like, it's type 2 fun to have those moments in a race where like it's really hard, but like the more you can embrace it, the more like the better your story can be about like how you got through it. And again, the prouder you can be of yourself. Awesome. Coach Parker, I'm going to have you round this out for us if you don't mind.
Yeah, definitely. I'm touch on a few more things. The one thing I kind of wanted to, close with and finish off with was something I actually learned after the race. I was talking with Kat Matthews, and for those of you that don't know, I was a little bit disappointed with myself because I was really hoping for a sub 3 in the run. That was a big goal of mine, even though Alice said not to focus too much on number goals, but that's something I actually did much better this year, as opposed to last year. Last year, my only really why of racing was to hit certain metrics and whatnot, whereas this year, instead of having, number goals, because we all have them, people say, oh, don't let numbers define you, or, don't race because of the numbers, it's impossible to have them. But instead of letting them define me, I just, this time around, I use them more as kind of like a, I don't know, like an extra bonus, and my real reason why I wanted to race was really just to enjoy it and, race it, just to race a race again and be competitive. And I think having that difference in mind shifts between the 2 years was a big difference. And, even though my swim was a little bit slower this year, I still stayed positive, had a great bike. And then, yeah, I didn't have the run I wanted, but I still came away with lots of lessons learned. And I'll take those lessons that I learned into my next race and the race after that. But after the race, I was talking with Kat. I'm like, so how do you crack the code of running a sub 3 marathon? What are the workouts? What's your fitness have to be like? Because I said I feel like I did everything right leading into this. I was running a lot, nailing workouts, and she said, sometimes it just comes down to luck. You can have all the best fitness in the world, you can nail everything, but some days, it just isn't your day. And that's why it's Ironman. So much can go wrong. There's so much that happens throughout the entire day. You're out there for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, maybe even longer hours. And you just have to take that into account and know that it's not, for everything come together, you do need a little bit of luck. I think we can all agree that luck does play a role. And sometimes it's just about, keep showing up, and eventually you will have your day. But if you give up after the first, second, third, fourth, fifth time, then, you're probably leaving stuff on the table. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, don't, just because you didn't have the result you wanted this time, don't, feel like you need to change everything or be super frustrated, feel like you did something wrong. Maybe you did do everything right and it just wasn't your time yet, wasn't your day yet. But if you keep showing up, and then I'm sure, it'll all come together one day.
Yeah, that's so good. One other thing that Parker, and I'll let you expand on this if you want, something else that he had mentioned was there's always another race.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk through that, Parker?
Yeah, sure. That's kind of like when I goes off what I just mentioned. And, that's also the beauty of it. It's not like I was actually thinking about this. I'm like, man, it would suck if I was competing in the Olympics because I'd have to wait another 4 years to try again. But, with the Ironman or triathlons, you can race 3, 4, 5, 6 times, maybe even more every year. And so you really don't have to wait that long to try again. And as long as you learn from your mistake, then hopefully the next time will be a better outcome, or you'll mess up something else and then you'll have something else to motivate you. And I think that's, something that's great about this sport is there's always so much to learn. And for everything, there's always something else to try, something new to try, different workouts, different nutrition strategies, whatever it may be. And knowing that and letting that drive you and motivate you, because that's something that's really motivating me now. It's like, if I would have, ran that sub 3 and had a great race, then I know I definitely would not be as motivated as I am now to get back into training and race the rest of the year. And so even though it sucks I didn't, accomplish all my quote unquote set goals, I'm excited to kind of change my training and maybe change some nutrition stuff I have to work on that I talked to my coach. and see how that benefits me in my next race. And so, yeah, while I was racing, I was already thinking of, planning the next training block, planning how I'm going to change things going forward. And so just keep that in mind. And, the world doesn't end with one bad day. There's always going to be another race. So, yeah, just appreciate that and take that into account when you're racing.
Yeah, that's good. The best race that I ever had was after a race where things didn't go the way that I wanted it to. And I think that's kind of the exciting thing, like Parker mentioned, where there's so many opportunities, and one thing that I would say is stay engaged with your coach, be honest about what went well and what didn't. I think it's really easy we build up, and then it's here. And then we can just you have to process all these emotions, I tell my athletes, don't make any decisions, 24 hours after a race, don't financial decisions, life decisions, nothing, don't do anything 24 hours after a race, because you have to process everything that you went through. And then you kind of go through the motions and you're like, okay, now I've processed this. And I think that's then a valuable time to sit down and look at what went well, what didn't, and just kind of assess, where do we go from here? What are new things that we want to experiment with? What are new things that we want to try? And ultimately, everyone's going to be very unique in what works for them. And just a plug, that's why it's so valuable to have a coach, because they can help you navigate that. And they can help you identify, okay, what works for you. But those are all lessons that you can just take into your next race, into your next training block, whatever it is for you that's next. But again, just kind of stay engaged. Yes, communication is key. We could have a whole nother call on that, but yes, communication is key. So I would really, really encourage you guys, think about everything that we talked about here. There's so much good information here, and just reflect on what applies to you, to maybe your race that you already did this year or the one that's upcoming on the calendar, and what lessons can you take from this conversation and apply it, and have a conversation with your coach. Don't just muddle this over in your head, have a conversation with them, engage with them, and again, be honest about what your goals are, be honest about what the path moving forward looks like. But it is my most favorite time of year. Race season is here. Everyone be hyped up every single weekend, because pretty much there's a race from now to the end of the year. And again, hopefully y'all find some value in this. Anything that we didn't touch on before we call it? Man, we are 6:30 on the dot. I'm so proud of us. Okay, awesome. I hope y'all have a great week. We will not have a call next week as it's Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to the mothers, and we will see y'all the 19th. Okay, bye.